You are enough. Whatever you have, whatever you know, whatever you feel, you are enough. Listen to that little voice inside that directs you what your next thing is, and believe that you can do it.
Welcome back to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, and I am back with another episode, another inspiring story for you. As you heard in the last episode, there has been a lot going on in my life over the past few months, but the One Girl Revolution podcast is back with some incredible new stories, new episodes coming your way every single Wednesday. Make sure that you subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and please encourage your friends and family to subscribe as well. Share our episodes with your friends and family. Share on social media. Please make sure that you're following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. This is a great way for us to communicate with you on a daily basis. And every single day we're coming up with inspirational content. We post all of our podcasts on there, so make sure that you're following us on social media. Also, I want to mention that we have 2 new websites up, so check them out. onegirlrevolution.com, that's our original website, but we did a whole refresh and added all kinds of cool content. You can buy a t-shirt on there. You can become a monthly or one-time donor to our nonprofit organization. All of our podcast episodes are up there, all of our documentaries, so much going on. So the number onegirlrevolution.com. We also built a nonprofit website as well. So onegirlrevolution.org, so onegirlrevolution.org. Check out both of our sites and please share them. We're so grateful for all that you do to support this revolution, and we want you to continue to be a part of what we're building, what we're doing. We also give you ways that you can get involved in One Girl Revolution too, not just by donating to the nonprofit, but also there are proactive ways you can get involved in what we're doing. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I'm so excited to finally welcome Wendy Steele, founder of Impact100. You know when you read a story or hear about a person and it just sticks with you and you think about that person, or you'll see different things pop up on LinkedIn or other places about their work and you just keep being reminded of this person? Well, I heard about Wendy years ago, but never sat down to simply send her an email to invite her on the podcast. So a couple weeks ago, I finally sat down, wrote her the email, invited her to come on the podcast, and she emailed me back almost immediately. If you listen to this podcast, you know that I don't believe in coincidences, and it's actually perfect timing. Wendy has a new book coming out in April, and also the Impact100Global conference is going to be here in Detroit this summer. So exciting. Wendy is the founder of Impact100, a collective of women who are dedicated to joining forces to do good together in the world and make an impact together. Impact100 is a collective force for good, uniting and empowering women to give together, creating transformational impact both locally and globally. Wendy is so inspiring, and the work that she and this empowered network of women are doing will absolutely blow you away. You are going to love this episode, and so without further ado, here's my conversation with Wendy. Wendy, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thanks, Kate. I'm excited to be here.
I feel like I've known about you for so long. I've been following your story in Impact100 for the past couple of years. And I actually found out about you from Mary Pat Rosen, who's a mutual friend of ours. And she founded one of the chapters in the Metro Detroit area. And she told me about you, and I've been following you and meaning to reach out to you, but haven't until now. But I believe in timing, and it's perfect timing because you have a lot of great things coming up with Impact100. Your conference is coming to Detroit, and your new book comes out in April. So there are so many things that I want to talk to you about, but I'm just so grateful to have you on the podcast. So thank you for your time, and thanks for coming on.
Oh my gosh, Kate, thank you. And thank you for this platform that you're creating for women everywhere. You really are making a huge difference. And I know I'm not alone in saying thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Wendy. Well, I was talking to a friend. I was thinking about this conversation with you. I was talking to a friend the other day just about how oftentimes we kind of define ourselves by what we do, and we would define others by what they do. And of course, I wanted to have you on this podcast to talk about Impact100 and all the work that you do. But to kind of pull it back a little bit and look at the big picture, How would you define yourself? How would you describe yourself? I know a lot of us would describe ourselves as a sister or a mother or a friend or a communicator or, by the things that we care deeply about. But how would you define yourself?
Oh my gosh, that is a really good and a really hard question. I would say my definition of myself can kind of change, but at a high level, the things that don't change is I'm a caregiver, I'm an encourager, I'm a mom, a wife, a friend, a daughter, and an unlikely founder.
I love those unlikely founder stories, which I feel like on One Girl Revolution, we've had a lot of those where it's somebody that just, they did the right thing, or they did the thing that they were supposed to do, or they put one foot in front of the other until they finally created something, created an organization. And I know that that's your story. So before we get into Impact 100 and how that started, I would love to rewind and have you talk a little bit about your upbringing, a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and just your story.
Oh my gosh. Well, my story is a little bit complicated, as I think with many women, it's not a straight line. It's sort of a zigzaggy path. So I was born in Connecticut and then grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, but grew up spending summers in northern Michigan. So that's kind of part of where our Michigan roots start to come together. My mom died when I was a kid. And that is a real defining moment. I think even when we're older and we lose a parent, it can be a defining moment. But when you're young, it can be a game changer. And it was through that time that I really saw my dad step up in a significant way. My maternal grandparents were a huge influence in my life. I paid attention to what was happening all around me. And I knew that the adults in my life cared very much about leaving the world a little bit better than we found it. So we didn't have any like big conversations around the dining room table. It was much more in the subtle things. Like if I was going to go babysit down the street, my dad would tell me that these parents were going to pay me to watch their children. And while the kids were sleeping or watching a movie or playing quietly, that was not my opportunity to rest. It was my opportunity to clean up the kitchen, to load the dishwasher, to wipe down the counters, to run the vacuum. So that when the parents came home, they found their home and their kids better than when they left. And that concept really played out in almost everything we did in a super subtle way. My grandparents were the same. And I think the sense from a young age, I'm one of three girls. My dad, my grandparents, they never said I wouldn't be able to do certain things because I was a girl. I just didn't really understand that those glass ceilings existed. Now I certainly hit plenty of them and crashed through a few of them, but I never doubted that I didn't have every path available to me. And I think in a lot of ways, that makes me one of the really lucky few in feeling that throughout it all and in spite of very early loss and tragedy.
It's amazing how our own stories can really lead us on this path. And even those little things about you sharing about babysitting, because I was raised in a similar family. Like my mom would always tell me when I went over to somebody's house, it wasn't just to have fun or to play with my friends, even when I wasn't babysitting, if I was going over to somebody else's house. But no, you have to clean up after yourself and help them and be of service. And looking back, it's like, oh my gosh, I still do the same stuff now. I stay at somebody's house or go to a friend's house for dinner, and I still find myself kind of reverting back to those things that we learned. And so it's so important too for parents and other individuals to be thinking about the next generation, the upcoming generation. And it starts young, how we treat people, both good and bad, how we see our differences, how we react to different cultures or different people or people in the community, how we interact with one another. That really starts young. And so it's so important to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you get from that all the way to Impact 100? What are the things that kind of happened in that next chapter of your life?
Oh my goodness. So if I go back to my grandparents for a minute, my grandfather was a banker. And when I was young, way before I started thinking about careers, I asked him about his banking career and what he liked most about it or what he was most proud of. And what he told me was that in his view, bankers helped people. And during the Great Depression, he was so proud that he never once foreclosed on a single borrower. Now, in those days, they were all men and they were farmers, they were fathers, they were entrepreneurs, small business owners. And when he described working with each one of them to realign their repayment structure, to allow some flexibility, he made clear the pride he had, not just in his role, but in the strength and the ethics and the hard work of all of those clients. He went on to tell me that whether even giving a loan to someone was helping them to fulfill a dream, turning down a loan was allowing them to reconsider their request so that it had a higher likelihood of success and wouldn't give them an undue burden of debt. He talked about savings vehicles and all the things that saving can bring. And so when I went to college, I was an economics major and I wanted to help people. So my career was in banking. I graduated from Connecticut College, started my banking career, spent more than 20 years in the trust and private bank space. The last role was senior vice president and regional manager for a local, a regional bank, which was amazing. Impact 100 came alongside that. All along the way, every time I went on a job interview, part of the questions that I would ask the potential employer had to do with their view of community service and giving back. And so as a result, I'm very lucky to have only worked for organizations that not only appreciated giving back, volunteer service, board service, community service, but they actually encouraged it and supported it in a way so that I never had to take personal time or a vacation day to do that kind of work in the community. Now, I was relocated to Cincinnati and I went there not knowing a soul. I do what I always would have done is I got involved in the community. I was a member of the junior league. I had young kids at the time, so I got involved in their school and in church and all of that. I was working as a banker and I met these amazing women and I found these really incredible causes that were solving important problems that were facing the local community. And when I would invite these women to come join me in whatever work I was doing, I heard a lot of very legitimate reasons why they felt they couldn't join me. They would say things like, gosh, I travel for my work. I can't make a regular meeting. Or it's hard to justify paying a babysitter $10 an hour to come out and volunteer with you. They also had this sense of, gosh, if I've ever given to a nonprofit, I never know when they spend it. I don't know where the money goes. I don't know if it matters. And then, of course, the most disturbing was this overall sense that they didn't have enough. They didn't have enough money to make a difference. They didn't have enough expertise. They didn't have enough time. They weren't knowledgeable enough to make the right choice, and it wouldn't matter anyway. This kind of feedback was received from women of every socioeconomic status, every walk of life, every age group. And I really wondered how I could overcome those very legitimate issues that were in front of them, because I knew that not only did Greater Cincinnati need what these women could bring to the table, needed their hearts, their minds, and their checkbooks too, but that those women, all women, needed to know what it felt like to be a part of the solution, to be a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. And instead of wringing your hands and worrying about the problems that are facing their neighbors and friends, instead, they could be inspired by the nonprofits and the individuals who are out every day working on those solutions. And when the summer of 2001, with a spiral notebook, I started to write down all the objections I had heard from all of these women, one by one, trying to overcome them until what was left on the page is what we now know as Impact 100.
Watch One Girl Revolution's Emmy-nominated short documentary, The Girl Inside, on our YouTube channel or at onegirlrevolution.com. The Girl Inside features a poignant look at the stories of incarcerated women within Cook County Jail and a life-changing academic course taught by Dr. Laura Biaggi called Storytelling as a Healing Art. This short documentary reunites Dr. Biaggi with 5 of her former students for a special one-day course on the transformative power of our stories and our voices. And what is revealed is the girl inside. Watch the Emmy-nominated short documentary The Girl Inside today on YouTube or at onegirlrevolution.com. I read a quote the other day about how doubt is a dream killer, and I think that's something that all of us experience, but women particularly, I think in a particular way, women experience that, where we think, oh, I don't have enough time to do this, or I don't have enough money to actually make a difference, or I can't do that. I'm not good enough for that. And what I love so much about Impact 100 is you make it attainable for women to actually make a difference and see their impact, not only, contribute, but actually watch their dollars, watch their dedication, watch their time and effort and talent, all the things that they're putting into the organization, watch it play out and watch it make a massive impact in so many organizations.
Yeah, that was all a part of it. One thing that I knew early on that I don't think was mainstream at that point, I think people have now proven it from a data standpoint, but I knew that women had to feel connected to their donation, because if you're connected to that gift, you then become connected to the bigger gift. The idea of pre-tax donations that come out of your paycheck and you won't even feel it, that's not a bad thing. That's a good tax strategy, in fact, but it doesn't allow you the same sort of connectedness to the organizations and the people that you're helping. And so a big part of it was that this $1,000 would be a stop and think gift, that even if you're someone who is really wealthy, you would think about it before you wrote that check or made that donation. And when you do, you then would follow what happens from there.
I know you shared a little bit about the journal and, interviewing people and trying to figure out solution. Was there a spark moment that you knew, like, okay, I have to found an organization, Impact 100, this is it? Or did you sort of just stumble into it and it just became what it is today?
It's an interesting question. I will say I believe generally that when we see a problem, regardless of what it is, and it really stays with you, it means that it's our problem to solve. It doesn't mean that it's our problem to talk about, to wring our hands about. It is our problem to say, what part can I play to make that change? And for me, I had done 2 things in Cincinnati. I had served on nonprofit boards, and I knew how much they needed significant grants. I knew that they needed more than just the smaller grants that come in a little bit at a time. They needed something to really fully execute on their strategy. And I knew all of these women needed an avenue, needed a way to get involved in the community that was different. So that summer with that notebook, my intent was to do something. I didn't know what that something would look like, but my intent was to solve that problem and to do something. And when I created the Impact 100 model, because I didn't have deep and wide nonprofit experience, but I had really smart friends, I called those friends and said, am I crazy? Tell me what you think about this idea. It's so simple. If it already exists, I know a lot of women I want to get connected to it. And if it doesn't, I think we should start it. And so I think I knew almost as soon as I started the first pen to the paper of what the problem was, that it was going to be my job to help solve this problem.
Well, you've solved the problem and now it's just grown and evolved. And there's so much that we could say about Impact 100. But for people that are listening, if they don't understand, if they don't know the model or they don't know anything about Impact 100, what can you share about what Impact 100 is and how it works?
It's really simple. Impact 100 is a local group of women. So you gather at least 100 women who each donate $1,000. 100% of that money gets pooled into a grant that's offered back into the local community across 5 broad focus areas: education, environment, health and wellness, arts and culture, and family. The idea is that there wouldn't be a nonprofit in the area whose mission wouldn't qualify for the grant. So we're not women funding women and girls. We are very decidedly women funding communities. And when all 5 of those areas are well funded, the community rises. Now, women get to choose their involvement. If you want to join and write your check as a member, that's all you need to do other than vote at the end of the year. But if you want to get involved, you'll have the opportunity to learn how to review a grant application, how to make a site visit. Ultimately, we, through our membership, we process all those grant applications that come in till we have one finalist in each of our 5 areas, at which point it's one woman, one donation, one vote. At our annual awards celebration, everyone hears from our nonprofit finalists and casts their vote. And the highest vote getter receives the entire grant. Impact 100 in Cincinnati started out with 123 members, and they gave away one grant of $123,000 that first year. The largest Impact 100 today has more than 1,100 members. And on a single day, they give away $1.1 million. For me, my goal is that every Impact 100 community reaches their highest potential, whatever that is. The zip codes, the communities, the neighborhoods that raise the most money aren't always the wealthiest from a demographic standpoint. As long as each chapter grows to include as many women as possible, then it's a thriving chapter. The numbers can fluctuate, but the goal is to be as inclusive as we possibly can so that we can fund the most grants, so that we can make the most difference in every Impact 100 community.
How many chapters do you have? And are they just in the US or are you around the world? Or
we are around the world. So we have more than 65 chapters. 8 of those are in Australia, 1 in New Zealand, 1 in the UK. And right now we have more than 50 communities that are in varying stages of startup.
That's so awesome. So no matter where people are, they can reach out to you. And we'll talk about ways that people can get involved towards the end of the episode. But I want to encourage everybody to reach out to you. Look on your website to see where there's a chapter. And if there's not a chapter, I'm sure that they can reach out to you and say, hey, I love what you're doing. I want to start a chapter in my own area. And what I love so much about Impact 100 is it makes it very attainable for everybody. I think that everyone can, and maybe you can't do it immediately. Maybe you can't give $1,000 right now, but to say, okay, my goal over the next 3 years is to become a member of Impact 100.
Yeah. And that's the idea, honestly, is it is attainable for most people. Sometimes it's a budgeting thing, and it might take a little time to realign some of your spending to be able to do it. But what we find is that 50% of the women who join Impact 100 have never written a check for $1,000 to a single charity prior to joining. doesn't mean they don't have the capacity necessarily. It just means they've never done it. And even when I created the model, I had never written a check to a single charity for $1,000 before. I figured I could do it, but I never had done it before that. And so that's what we see around the world is people who haven't done it yet realize they can do it. And then once they do it, they find ways to keep on giving, and they rearrange their budget priorities because giving back in this way becomes such an important part of who they are.
Yeah, it's like once you do it once, then you can just keep doing it. And again, seeing that impact, I think, is so important. We all need that to be able to see like the impact of our dollars. And so that's so cool what you're able to do through Impact 100. I would love to hear, I know there are so many organizations and individuals that you've supported, the Impact 100 has supported through the years. And I'm sure it's really difficult to choose one or two stories, but are there one or two stories of people that have been helped, who have been impacted by the work of Impact 100 that really kind of touched your heart in a special way, or kind of fueled your fire to say, oh my gosh, this is exactly why Impact 100 exists?
My gosh, honestly, Kate, there are so many stories, but one of my favorites, it came out of Newport News, Virginia, Impact 100 Greater Peninsula. I was invited to go speak at an event where they recruit members. So what I maybe didn't make clear is the way Impact 100 works is you make your donation of $1,000 this year. We give the money away when we ask you to come back and do it again next year and bring your friends. So I was at one of those events and I was speaking alongside two nonprofit people. And I'll talk to you about one of them. This woman is the executive director of a domestic violence shelter, and she had been an Impact 100 grant recipient. We often talk about the impact of Impact 100, and part of her story, she talked about the grant of 100,000 plus that she used in her organization. But then she went on and she said that one of the things that happen when you're a grantee of an Impact 100 organization is you suddenly find that you have this network of women who now not only care about the work you're doing, but they support you. And she had a situation come up where part of the work her organization does is provide safe and confidential housing for women and men and children who are fleeing domestic violence situations. One of the buildings that she had 3 or 4 families housed in had some structural damage, and she had to rehouse them like right away. She didn't have the budget. She didn't know what to do. And so as she was trying to problem solve and she reached out to her board, she also called one of her contacts at that particular chapter. Within hours, she was directed to another Impact 100 member who was in the real estate business. And I think it was within a couple of days, every family was rehoused. None of that was in the grant agreement when the money was given away. None of that is promised to every nonprofit. But these stories of the impact of Impact 100, the ripple effect where more money gets donated, even for those nonprofits that don't get the grant. Once we know who they are and we love them, we value them, we open our networks, we open our wallets, we open our hearts, and we do what we can to help. And that kind of transformation, that kind of impact goes well beyond what I hoped or dreamt would happen within Impact 100. And so there are lots of stories like that. And every single time, it just makes my day when I hear them.
I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to go to one of the breakfast events here in Detroit and got to hear from some of your recipients. And it's just so powerful. There are so many different types of organizations, like you shared, and people that are impacted by the work that you do. But also, I love the power of bringing women together. And I see that myself through the One Girl Revolution community, that everybody's always looking for ways to support one another. And I know that that's a huge part of Impact 100 is bringing women together and supporting one another. And like you said, even if somebody didn't get the grant, that you're finding ways that women were problem solvers. So we're finding ways to support all these organizations and these individuals that are really making a change in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing.
So where do you go from here? I know that you've grown so much from when you started, and I know it's hard, we don't have a crystal ball to figure out exactly where you go from here, but in your big dream of dream worlds, Wendy, where do you hope that Impact 100 goes from here?
Kate, that's an easy one to answer. So in 20 years, in 2002, we gave our first grant of $123,000. By the end of 2022, we had collectively given away more than $123 million around the globe. 100% of that money happened because someone in a local community raised their hand and said, I want to start an impact chapter here. What I want to see happen is that the capacity to not just help and serve those women who raise their hand and say, I'm ready to launch. Also, the existing chapters who are all run by volunteers, and the ability to go into underestimated, underrepresented communities and invite those women to bring Impact 100 to their community, to walk alongside them. Because one thing we know, if we have to self-select, there are only certain women who are going to be comfortable self-selecting, who are going to be able to see themselves in this way. But what if we could encourage more women to do that? And what if we started getting into neighborhoods and communities that needed it most, that often get overlooked, that are underserved in so many ways? For me, so the work I do at Impact 100 Global is I support all of the chapters that want to launch and also the existing chapters to get lifted to their highest potential. But I don't have enough bandwidth to adequately serve the people who are raising their hand. It is like that overused analogy of drinking through a fire hose. Yet, I still believe that we not only need to service those people, we need to drink through that fire hose. We also need to proactively go out and find people. We have to build enough sustainability so that if I'm hit by a bus tomorrow, the support for Impact 100 chapters around the globe would continue. Right now, if I were hit by a bus tomorrow, it's not a clear path to have that support sustainable into the future. And so that's what keeps me up at night. And that is absolutely my goal, is to elevate the work of Impact 100 Global to a place where we can be certain it will thrive into the future, not just supporting those who raise their hand and ask for help, but proactively reaching out to provide not just the assistance, but also the leadership equipping of women everywhere.
Donate to One Girl Revolution's nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, highlighting inspiring women and girls that are changing the world through their lives, promoting their work and their organizations, and building a powerful and positive force out in the world dedicated to empowering women, their voices, and their stories. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate.
Well, an army is being raised up, because I've even seen all the different chapters here in Metro Detroit, and I know of chapters across the country and know women that are involved in them. And so I know that there are big things happening for Impact 100, and I know that those leaders are being cultivated and they're going to continue to stand up. And hopefully through this podcast, I encourage everybody to look up Impact 100 and get involved, because like anything, I think it's important that you brought that up, because a lot of leaders or founders don't often think about what happens if I'm not around, or what happens if some sort of family emergency. It's not even that we die or something, but it's like, what if some sort of family emergency keeps you from continuing? Who's going to carry the torch? Because it's so important. Like you said, the needs of so many people in our world and the organizations and individuals that are answering those needs are so critical, and they continue to grow. And so the networks like Impact 100 or One Girl Revolution, we need to continue to grow and evolve and continue to elevate more leaders that can help carry the torch when things change in our lives. But Wendy, I want to talk to you about your book, because you have a book coming out in April. What can you tell me about the book?
Oh my gosh. Yes, April 18th. It's called Invitation to Impact. And it really is an invitation to impact. So it's part memoir. It was rather awkward in the beginning, writing my personal story. I have to say that was it felt weird. I encourage anyone to do it, because once you start, it was like out, everything comes that got edited back. Don't worry, you're not going to know every moment of my life, but you definitely will know more about my life than you otherwise would. In part because I wanted women and men, frankly, to understand that sometimes I think we live our lives looking at other people and we only see their highlight reel, and we believe that that is the whole story for them. Yet for ourselves, we only see our mistakes. We only see, the spinach in your teeth and the hair sticking up and the blooper reel. And we believe that that is who we are. And so it is a very honest story of partially about my upbringing, kind of what led me to start Impact 100, but also the missteps along the way we grew sort of in spite of ourselves, and the knowledge of what's happening today because of Impact 100. So to elevate the platform, to encourage more people to get involved in their community and to start solving the most pressing problems that they see in the world or in their backyard.
Well, I can't wait to read it. And like I said to you before we started recording, I will be sure to promote it through One Girl Revolution and on all of our social media channels. So once it's available for people to order, I will post the link so people can easily get that. I will put the link in the show notes and also just all the details for now about your book so people can check it out by April 18th. So excited to read it. And I know there are going to be so many people that are going to want to read it and will be so inspired, just like we're inspired by hearing your story. So I know you also have a conference coming up, which is in my home turf in Detroit this summer. What can you tell me about the conference?
Oh my gosh. So we do these global conferences every other year. The last one was 2021, but it was fully remote, as you might imagine. So we haven't met in person since 2019. By far, of all the programming we do out of Impact 100 Global for not just startup chapters, existing chapters, women leaders from around the world, this is always the one event that you just don't want to miss. It's an opportunity for people to learn more about Impact 100, to be inspired. This year's theme is telling your story with passion and purpose. And so this notion of the importance of storytelling will be woven through even the very tactical breakout sessions about, how do you recruit new members and how do you attract grant applicants, et cetera. Attendees will actually be able to look at their personal story, their personal brand, how that relates then to their local chapter, how that might relate to their community, and then to the entire Impact 100 community. So it's going to be really powerful and exciting, and I would love to see you there.
Well, I can't wait. And I was looking through the website and so excited about all the different groups that are involved. And of course, I know a lot of the women here in Metro Detroit that are involved in Impact 100. And so I can't wait to get everybody together. I'm sure there are going to be great things that come out of that as well. So anybody who runs an organization, anybody who's interested in Impact 100, or if you're just curious, or you just want to get together with some other amazing, inspiring, powerful women, that is a great conference to check out. So I will have that in the show notes as well. And there's so many, oh my gosh, there's so many great things coming up, Wendy. And I'm just so excited to be connected with you and Impact 100. And I can't wait to see where you go from here. For people that are listening, how can they get involved in your work and how can they support what you're doing?
Oh my gosh, thank you for asking that. They can get involved in my work in a number of ways. Certainly, if they're interested in starting a chapter or joining a chapter, they can reach out to me. If they're interested in supporting Impact 100 Global at the movement level, they may be like, I'm not able to join a local chapter, but I really want to support the movement. I would love that. So I can be reached at impact100global.org or wendyhsteele.com. Certainly my book, they can connect with me through email, through social media. I pretty much say yes to almost everyone who friend requests me. I'm going to say that, and then there's going to be some weird stalker that'll do this, but normally I promise I do. And I'm very attainable. My cell phone, my email is all very public information. So I would be happy to connect and talk through exactly what kind of impact they want to make and how we might be able to do something together.
I also want to say, if people want to invite you to come and speak or come and do an interview about your book or any other work that you're doing, people can of course reach out to you as well. Because I know we have some people that listen that are in those kind of areas that I want to make sure that they can reach out to you, because we need to continue to grow the great work that you're doing. And the more that people know about it, the more others can be empowered by it and get involved and make a difference in the world.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that would be amazing. As we get ready to launch this book, one of the most remarkable things, once I got over actually writing it, is how kind people are. This book has gotten really nice endorsements from giants in the field and outside of the field. People like Jane Goodall and Nancy Brinker, people like Doug Stanton and Adam Grant and Sean Acor, and so many more. It's amazing. So I would love to come and talk. I would love to do book signings. I would love to talk to your book group, whatever it is that works. It would be a real honor.
Well, I can't wait to read it. And again, I will promote it through all of our social media and put it in the show notes so people can easily find it. Wendy, you are such a one girl revolution to me and to so many others. I know so many people that have followed your story or gotten to meet you. You just inspire all of us to be a one girl revolution, just like you. But I want to know, who's a woman or girl that's inspired you or inspires you still today?
It's a really hard question because the line is so long of women who have stepped in my life in a powerful way. I will say to this day, and she's been gone for a really long time now, my maternal grandmother, who I called Grammy, she really poured into my life in a very special way. And so I would say for me, she was that one girl revolution person who she guided me. She stepped in when it wasn't convenient for her, and she didn't leave long after that initial step in. And for people in your head, if you're thinking, well, she was your grandmother, she had to. She didn't have to. But she did and continued. And so I always think of her first. And then there are millions of other women. I have to say I'm inspired by my daughter, Haley, and my daughter, Brooke, who are the next generation I learn from them every day. I love them. I admire them. And so I'm sort of sandwiched between some amazing women.
That's amazing. And I know you work with so many amazing women too through Impact 100. So it's always a difficult question to answer because it's like, oh, we have so many people, and people have asked me that question, like who's my favorite episode on the podcast, or who's the most inspiring woman I've met. I'm always like, all of them. I know there's a aspect of that in your life, but that's really, really beautiful, of the women in your family that have impacted and continue to impact you and your life. Wendy, I'm so grateful again to have you on this podcast. I'm so grateful for all the great work that you do through Impact 100. Because this podcast is dedicated to women and we're focused on women and girls, we always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I would say the one message is you are enough. Whatever you have, whatever you know, whatever you feel, you are enough. Listen to that little voice inside that directs you what your next thing is, and believe that you can do it. I think that when we listen to that voice inside, we end up going in the right direction. And it takes courage, but you've got courage and you've got what it takes. So reach out and ask for help when you need it, and go forward and solve those problems that are bothering you sort of in the back of your brain. Realize that that may be your problem to start solving, and you're the right person at the right time to do just that.
Well, and like I said earlier, doubt is a dream killer, and you are the answer to that. Impact 100 brings women together. So even if people are doubting, or they need courage, or they just need support, I encourage all of you to check out Impact 100 and get involved no matter where you are. And again, if there isn't a chapter in your area, reach out and start one, because we all need other women to open the door for us to be who we are meant to be. So Wendy, I'm so grateful for your time, for all the great work that you do. Thank you so much for everything that you do with Impact 100. And thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Oh my gosh, Kate, thank you. And please keep doing what you're doing. You are a real game changer. And I really appreciate everything you do, not just for me and Impact 100, but for women and girls everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you in June for the conference.
I can't wait.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.